We begin with a troubling reality. Anne-Marie Anderson reports sometimes the lives of children and parents are destroyed by the person you trust the most.
This is the biggest tragedy I've seen in my 31 years in the criminal justice system. There's nothing I can do. You stole the youth from these little guys.
Garen Pearson was sentenced 4 months ago for sexually molesting boys on the Little League team he coached in Las Vegas.
To you, Garen Pearson, you son of a bitch. I've been told prison's like hell. May you rot in hell.
He didn't take care of my son. He destroyed him. To me, he's just like a murderer. That's the way I see him. You're evil.
2 years ago, Marian Martinez's then 10-year-old son, Adrian, was repeatedly sexually molested by Pearson.
What people have to understand, this is a normal guy. He's not someone that's he's not really a stranger. You know him, and it could be your next door neighbor. You just don't know.
On the field, Garen Pearson was a successful coach, turning a losing team into a winner. But off the field, he was a master charmer of the young boys who trusted him.
In essence, these guys seduced children, pretty much, with some variations, but pretty much the exact same way that adults have been seducing each other since the dawn of mankind.
Retired FBI Special Agent Kenneth Lanning spent over 2 decades consulting on sex crimes against children.
They shower these kids with attention and affection and kindness and gifts and presents and all kinds of things like that, and then gradually lower their inhibitions and so on and kind of take them down this road over time.
Garen was always at the house. He would always come around. He would take Adrian all different places. He would call every day. But then when they would talk about baseball.
When Pearson began giving Adrian expensive gifts, his parents became suspicious. As a precaution, Marian Martinez decided to make sure her son was never alone with his coach.
So every time Adrian would say, Garen, pick him up, I said, well, is somebody else going to be there? But it didn't matter because he was making sure that he was doing all the kids.
Those parents assumed that as long as there were other children around, nothing would happen. But unbeknownst to the parents, Garen had created these games where multiple boys were all being seduced and sexually molested at the same time. So the precautions that the parents thought they were taking were not enough.
Pearson continued sexually molesting the boys on his team for months, until one day Adrian Martinez crawled into his parents' bedroom, crying hysterically.
Where me and my husband are laying in our bed, and I heard the sniffling, and there was Adrian just laying on the floor. He was crying. He just kept crying and telling us there's nothing wrong, and then he said Garen's name, and we knew.
What exactly did he tell you?
He told us that Garen's been touching him in different places, and then he was telling us that Garen was having him and other boys do oral sex on him, and Garen would do oral sex on them. That's when I decided to call the rape center because I didn't know what else to do. Because I'd never in a million years, I really would have thought this would happen to my son.
After Adrian Martinez came forward, police discovered that Pearson had been abusing prepubescent boys for over 20 years. In March of this year, he was convicted of 39 counts of lewdness with a child and sexual assault.
Every day I still think about it. We had to move houses. I had to go play baseball at a different league, and I always feel that someone's watching me, no matter what I'm doing or where I am.
Garen Pearson was sentenced to 7 consecutive life terms. For sex crimes against children, punishment varies widely from state to state. Nevada has some of the toughest laws in the country, but other states, such as California, are more lenient. Detective Michael DiMatteo of San Bernardino, California, has investigated over 4,000 cases of sexual molestation involving children. In 1997, Norman Watson was coaching Little League Baseball in DiMatteo's district.
He would help children, take them to the store to buy sporting equipment, basically just being very helpful. He became an indispensable part of the family.
In 1980, Watson was convicted of lewdness with a minor and spent 6 years in a psychiatric hospital. Upon his release in 1986, he resumed coaching young boys. In July of 1997, DiMatteo, acting on a tip, questioned Watson for failing to register as a sex offender. During the interview, the Little League coach candidly revealed a history involving a disturbing number of victims.
I'm going to read your rights. How many different children do you think you were involved with in your lifetime, sexually like this?
A couple hundred.
Is it unusual for a child molester to have that many victims?
I believe the FBI, their statistics that state that your average child molester will molest 120 times before he gets caught.
In many of these cases, the child views their abuser as a friend and is reluctant to help an investigation.
The child makes this trade. I'm trading this quote-unquote sex for attention, affection, kindness, gifts. And very often, this individual, this adult, this coach, is treating this child better than any adult this child has ever met in their entire life.
And I remember 3 of the kids, when the judge asked them what they thought of me, they all still said that even though they knew that what happened was wrong, they still thought of me as their friend.
In November of 1997, Norman Watson was arrested again, this time for oral copulation and sodomy with some of the young boys he coached. He was convicted of 43 counts of lewdness with a minor and sentenced to 84 years in state prison. According to the Crimes Against Children Research Center, as many as 1 in 7 boys may become the victims of sexual abuse. The numbers are even higher, 1 in 4 for girls. Julie Bremner-Romius is in her final year of her medical residency at UCLA, where 8 years ago she was a volleyball All-American on a national championship team. In 1986, as a 17-year-old high school junior, Romius honed her skills at a private volleyball club in West Chicago, where she says her coach told her she had the potential to compete at the international level. Did you trust him?
100%. You know, why not? Here's someone who, was promising to take me to the stars, and I wanted to believe him. He had had a lot of success with his prior athletes, and why wouldn't I trust him?
Romius says her coach demanded up to 7 hours of practice a day, often without the rest of the team.
At that point, he'd isolated me from being close friends with anybody at school, maybe break up with my boyfriend, isolated me from my family.
And it was during a meeting with her coach, Rick Butler, that she alleges he first raped and sexually abused her.
Pretty much as soon as I walked into the room, he forced himself on me and raped me. I was a virgin, so it hurt a lot, and there was blood everywhere, and it scared me to death.
Romius claims the abuse continued for 18 months. For 7 years, she didn't tell authorities about the alleged assaults. But in 1995, while pursuing a career in medicine, she says she felt the need to make her accusations public.
I heard that he was doing something similar to somebody after me, and I realized that this wasn't going to stop unless someone came forward.
But as Anne-Marie Anderson tells us, Biletnikoff has lost. He lost a most precious gift.
Fred Biletnikoff was the epitome of toughness on the football field. But nothing he experienced on the field could have prepared him for the night of February 16th, when he and his wife woke to every parent's worst nightmare, a 2 a.m. knock on the door.
I came down and I looked and I saw policemen at the front door. And the first thing I thought, oh man, she must have been in some wreck, or, I thought the worst.
She just said, we understand Tracy might have been involved in something. Is she here? And I ran to the room. We were both calling her name, and there was no one in the bed.
Fred desperately dialed Tracy's pager number and called some of her friends in a frantic effort to find his daughter. But no one had seen her.
As soon as I talked to the detective, he said there might have been a problem. I knew that she had to be dead.
Tracy was the third of Fred Biletnikoff's 5 children, friendly and fun-loving, but also troubled. As a teen, she began experimenting with drugs and became addicted.
Tracy was into, she was into, shooting heroin, she was into, amphetamines. It's like I said to her a few times, I mean, I just couldn't imagine putting a needle in yourself.
She told me of the story. She goes, I'm 90 pounds, I'm 5'8", and I'm dying, and I need help.
In August of 1997, the 19-year-old checked into a residential treatment program.
I was proud in a way that she took the time and understood that she had a problem, and that she knew that if she didn't spend the time and get herself straightened around, that she was going to end up like a lot of kids dead.
After 10 months of intense work, it appeared Tracy had beaten her addiction. She moved back home and began to attend recovery support meetings.
She was in this whole new world of discovery, and her eyes were wide open.
In September of 1998, Tracy began dating Muhammad Haroun Ali, a drug counselor and recovering addict. But he had an ugly secret, a conviction for kidnapping a girlfriend in 1994. Just 5 months after they began dating, Ali brutally murdered Tracy Bolitnikoff. According to friends, Tracy decided to break off the relationship, but when an argument over her car turned into a struggle, Ali strangled her, first with his hands and then with a t-shirt. Afterwards, he dumped her body down this hill at a local college. But when police recovered her remains the next morning, they weren't sure if it was Tracy, so they called Fred.
Then when I talked to the detective, I said, well, do you want me to come over and see if that's her? The body said, no. He said, that's okay. And so he said, well, can you describe her, anything? And I said, well, she has an eye ring. And I said, and there's the calligraphy writing and a tattoo on her foot. He said, well, yeah, that's her.
Ali was arrested the following day and confessed. In March, he went on trial, and sitting in the front row were Fred and Angela Bolitnikoff.
We talked to Fred and Angela on numerous occasions about what was going to be taking place in court, and we'd asked them on a couple of different occasions, are you sure you want to attend this proceeding?
While Angela sat in the courtroom every day, Fred tried to avoid some of the most graphic details, like the videotaped confession and crime scene photographs presented by the prosecutor.
He had him turned so we couldn't see him, and just looking at the face on the jurors was unbelievable, and I mean, just the stares, the almost turning away, wanting to turn away.
Imagine sitting in a courtroom listening to someone describe how brutally your child was murdered, how they were strangled. I can't imagine sitting through something like that if it were my daughter.
The trial lasted 5 weeks. After 3 days of deliberations, the jury came back with a verdict of murder in the first degree.
When they actually were doing and deliberating in there, they felt so passionate about this case that they actually put the picture of Tracy up on the board so they could all look at it and remember her that way.
With sentencing set for tomorrow, the Bolitnikoffs say they finally feel free to move forward. They set up a foundation in Tracy's name and helped open a home for teen girls fighting drug addiction. They named it Tracy's Place of Hope.
She was really interested in moving forward into being a counselor and a mentor towards children. And I remember this, and I'm going, I can't let her dream die.
Bolitnikoff says the toughness he showed on the field was easy for him. He was raised to be tough and was taught to always keep his emotions on the inside, especially pain. But grief for a murdered child is not easily buried.
Unfortunately, when things like this happen to you, you kind of rely on that emotional toughness that you were brought up with, and I feel a lot of times it's more of a detriment to me than an asset. With Tracy's death, I feel good on one hand that I could handle it and have that type of background, and on the other hand, I wish I had more outward emotion about it.